video deals with the notion of childhood. Sociologists do not see childhood as a natural thing. They see it as socially constructed. It's defined and created by society. What is seen as childhood varies between societies, within societies, and over time. There are cross-cultural differences in childhood. Benedict argues that children in simpler non-industrial societies are treated differently from their modern Western counterparts. They have more responsibility at home and work, less value is placed on obedience to adult authority, and children's sexual behaviour is often viewed differently. Also, the behaviour expected of children and that expected of adults are clearly less separated. So, in non-industrial societies then, childhood isn't a separate status. It isn't, children aren't seen as people that need, protection or special in any way. Childhood in the West, so that's our notion of childhood, is seen as a special time, an innocent time of life. Children are seen as different to adults. Physically immature and not able to run their own lives. As a result, they need protection. They need a lengthy protective period of nurturing and socialisation. Childhood is a distinct life stage. Child is a separate status from adult according to Pilcher. This notion of separateness is very important. According to Cunningham, children are the opposite to adults. These differences illustrate the key sociological idea that childhood is not fixed and the same in all societies. Different cultures construct it differently. Historical differences in childhood. The position of children has also changed over time. The modern Western idea of childhood is a relatively recent invention. According to Aries, in medieval Europe, the idea of childhood did not exist. There were no children in the sense of the word. Children were not seen as being different. Work began at an early age, and children were mini adults with duties and skills. According to Shorter, parental attitudes towards children were very different. There were high child death rates which encouraged indifference and neglect. Especially towards infants. The modern notion of childhood began to emerge from the 13th century. Schools began to specialise only in the education of the young. The church increasingly saw children as fragile creatures of God, needing discipline and protection, and there was a growing distinction between children and adults' clothing, setting children apart from adults. Aries argues that this resulted in the emergence of the modern cult of the childhood. The 20th century was the century of the child. Why has this happened? Why has this notion of childhood really taken off? The position of children has changed due to major social changes during the 19th and 20th century. So there's lower infant mortality rates. More infants survive, meaning that parents had fewer children. And made greater financial and emotional investment in them. There's specialist knowledge about children's health and well-being. Theories of child development have stressed that children need supervision and protection. There's laws banning child labour. From the 1840s onwards, and changed children from economic assets to economic liabilities. There's compulsory schooling. So there's a period of dependency on parents for longer because they can't work, they have to go to school. There's child protection and welfare laws, which emphasise children's vulnerability and made their welfare a central concern. There's the idea of children having rights, and parents have a responsibility to protect the rights of the child. And there's laws about social behaviour of children. There's minimum ages for a wide range of activities from smoking, drinking alcohol, gambling, which reinforce the idea that children are different to all adults because they can't behave in the same ways. Industrialisation, though, was the main reason for the notion of childhood. Okay, this is important. Modern industry needs an educated workforce, so compulsory education is needed. Higher standards of living resulting from industrialisation led to lower infant mortality rates. So, let's talk now about the position of children and whether it has improved. There are two competing views on this. Okay, there's the March of Progress view. Aries, Shorter and others argue that children's position has been improving and today is better than it ever has been. Family and society have become child-centred. And it's all about the protection of the child. Children are better cared for in terms of their education and their psychological, emotional and medical needs. Most babies now survive past their first year of birth. There's higher living standards and smaller family sizes, which means that parents can afford to provide for their children's needs, and children are protected from harm and exploitation by laws against child abuse and child labour. So that's the March of Progress view. Now, there's also the conflict view, that childhood conflict theorists, for example Marxists and feminists, argue that the March of Progress is an overgeneralised and idealised image. It ignores inequalities among children and between children and adults. It ignores gender differences, e.g. girls are expected to do more housework. It ignores ethnic differences, e.g. Asian parents are more likely to be strict towards daughters than sons, and class inequalities. Poor children are likely to die in infancy or do badly at school. Age patriarchy was a notion established by Gittins, and Gittins argues that there's an age patriarchy of adult domination that keeps children subordinate. For example, adults exercise control over children's time, e.g. bedtimes, over children's space, where they're allowed to go, and over their body, over what they eat and wear. Adults make children economically dependent by preventing them from working. Children may resist this status of being a child by acting older, e.g. smoking and drinking alcohol, For Hockey and James, this shows that modern childhood is a status most children want to escape. The future of childhood is dealt with by Postman. And it says that childhood as we know it is disappearing. Okay, so childhood is disappearing. TV culture is replacing the written word, it's replacing the print culture. Children are now lacking literacy skills needed to access information. So TV then makes information available to adults and children, and the boundary between adulthood and childhood is broken down, and adult authority is weakened because children are exposed to adult ideas that they see on TV, like violence and pornography, that's not suitable to them. However, Opie believes that childhood is not disappearing. Others argue that norms about what childhood should be are being exported globally. Western childhood is not disappearing. She thinks it's spreading. Palmer talks about the toxic childhood, and that goes back to the whole fact that rapid technology and cultural changes are damaging children's development, e.g. junk food, computer games, intensive marketing to children, too many tests in education, long hours worked by parents, and as a result children are deprived of their childhood.